Well, welcome everybody to the Mastering Social Media for Business Growth session. It is really great to have you here with us today, and it is a really, really powerful session that Proudly South Africa have put together. A massive thanks to the team for the work that they have put together to get in front of you today. South Africa's top brass, in my opinion, for the content that you're going to be delivering here today. So I would get your notes and your notebooks out and really take notes for what you're going to see today. It's going to be a powerful session for you. So welcome to the future of social media growth. My name is Mike Saunders. I'm the CEO of Digital Lab. I'll be your facilitator today, and I'll be sharing a few notes with you as we kick off. But here's your agenda. A few opening remarks. We've got Proudly South Africa, Happy Kamalo, sharing some information with you a bit later. And then after that, we've got Guy Cranier sharing the relationship between paid and organic social media, such an important thing to take a look at. Renal Khoba from FGX will take a look at what it means to take people from the scroll inside your feeds right through to the sale. Flynn Africa will be taking a look at the power of social proof. And then we'll dive into some Q&As. So if you want to keep those Q&As running in the comment sections, if you'd like, and I'll keep track of those, and we'll bring them in at the end, and I'll ask them up for you, and we'll get those from the panelists as we go. So today is really about opportunity. It really is to understand that social media today is one of those platforms that one of those areas of marketing that is shifting, that is changing. We haven't seen a lot of change in the social media platforms for a number of years, but AI is having an impact in this space, albeit in a sort of quite a systemic type of fashion, and then also from just the way in which consumers are looking at products and services and the way in which they research things, and really just taking a shift in the way in which people do things. And so social media has a part to play in this, and we're going to unpack that quite a lot. And so today is really about opportunity. How do we take and look at this opportunity at the end of the day? So let's dive in. Let's take a look at what this shift is really all about. I want to take a look at three things. I'm going to share them with you, and then I'm going to share about three things that we should look at and how we should respond to this. So let's take a look at the first thing, the three shifts that we should take a look at. AI overviews. So what's really interesting to note is that if you take a look at how search engines operate, one of the biggest shifts that have been taking place over the last year is that in AI, Google search engines have taken over the first position in a lot of searches. So Google wants AI to answer questions inside search before they actually send people to people's websites. Why this is an important thing to note is that this whole idea of marketing drives getting people to your website is shifting, and things are going to change in the way in which this happens. I mean, HubSpot, one of the biggest inbound marketers on the planet, HubSpot reported in the last year, they reported a 15 to 20% drop in website traffic alone because of the impact of AI overviews. And so if you're in a situation where, from a marketing perspective, inbound marketing was one of the strongest ways in which to be able to drive traffic to your website and to be able to build business off the back of that. If one of the biggest shifts is AI overviews that take place in how people research, how people build, how people buy, then we have to think about how we market on other platforms, because this shifts the way in which consumers do things. When that happens, we have to wake up as marketers and as business owners. The other thing to understand around the whole digital marketing space that shifts the way things are happening is privacy, and to understand that cookie tracking has now become a mandatory feature. It is the law to enforce opt-in tracking across South African and a big chunk, I would say close to about 50% of the world, enforces that you should have opt-in tracking across your websites. And even when it's not legal, a lot of sites are applying it because of global practices, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, the interesting thing to understand about privacy and about these cookie tracking banners and what it means actually at the end of the day is that when we look at social media, a lot of people are tracking how social media impacts their website traffic and how this organic traffic actually builds out and builds out onto their website, how much traffic social media, both organically and paid, builds into their website, and then how much of that traffic actually turns in and converts revenue into their business. But here's the interesting thing. Cookie banner traffic and privacy banners are dropping Google Analytics tracking by 70 to 80% on the average website. So as soon as people start to comply to these laws, they start to see massive drops in traffic tracking. It doesn't mean that their website traffic is dropping. It means that they are tracking less and less of their traffic. And we see this a lot in our own data. We both host and run analytics, but we see sites that do 300,000 visits a day, only reporting in some cases, some of them only report on 3,000 visits a day. And that becomes very difficult in a social media landscape, especially, to be able to now track what is actually taking place inside your social media metrics. And it becomes very difficult to manage the expectations that we have inside our social media. So these are two things that are happening in the digital space, okay? And these are two things that make it really difficult to understand what's happening in our market and to kind of market the way we used to. And it shifts the mentality of how we have to approach website marketing. It shifts the mentality of how we approach inbound marketing, which social media was primarily about drawing people out of social channels and bringing them to our website, building communities so that people would make their way backwards and forwards into our sites, etc., and buy product, etc., etc., etc. But now, because of everything that's taking place, tech platforms as a whole want you to engage on their platform. So social media platforms are no different. So what they're asking us to do and what they're incentivizing is that they're incentivizing you to build content that stays on platform. They're incentivizing you to build content that generates great clicks, generates great responses, generates great views, great impressions. They want content that does well for comments, that engages the audience well. Why? Well, one, because it creates a great platform for them. But secondly, because if it keeps people in the platform, they can track and manage the engagement of that much better for you. And so they can show you the value of that inside the platform. They can control that dynamic much more because they have the permission to do so. But as soon as it comes out of that platform, it's harder and harder and harder for them to show the value of what they're doing. And so the way in which tech companies are doing this is to shift the dynamic of how they want you to manage this content. And that creates new challenges, new ways in which we need to think of things inside our social media landscape. And so on one side, the social media platforms are going to start rewarding companies for prioritizing those that market on the platform. But then on the other side of this, the question will be, is this good for our business? Because is it good for our business to build Facebook's platform, or is it better for our business to build our own platform? But if we focus only on building our own platform, we're not going to be rewarded in likes and impressions and building content and building our audiences from the platform itself. And so we're going to be in this weird sort of dichotomy of having to balance these two different returns out of our platforms. And so this is going to be an interesting space for us as this shift continues to happen. And these are things to watch quite carefully. So how do we respond to this? Well, in my mind, I think our role quite simply needs to be to continue and to kind of go back to what we initially went into social media for, which was to inspire, to entertain, to teach, and to connect. These were the truths that we lent into as social media experts, as business people, as people who went into content, and they did it really well. And I think the more we lean into this, the better. And a lot of people talk about influencer marketing and how we should be leaning on influencers. Influencers who do well do these things. And so brands who do well must do these things. And so we should rely less on are the people doing these things for us and actually do these things as businesses and brands. And so the first thing I can say to you is that the way in which we should respond to these changes is to put value in the feed. Don't chase the click. So don't try and like just make it all about the click and make it clickbaity and all of that sort of stuff. Put the value in the feed. I love this quote: trust is built in drops, not and it's lost in buckets. So if you just kind of throw everything at people and like just like drown them in your message to the point that they just get lost in a series of clickbait and all of this sort of stuff, you're just going to lose them. You're not going to build trust. But if you could build drops of your storyline and build value in the feed, that they can actually walk this journey with you and develop this trust bond that takes place inside the community of your feed, I think you've got a very different opportunity. And don't underestimate the value of advertising to be able to do this, because your organic feed is a very small percentage of your actual community, and your community, it can be defined very differently in the context of advertising as opposed to the context of those who follow you. So a lot of people talk about community, and I've been debating this idea around community because I really think it's about connection and community. But I don't think that community is the right, I think it's the right word, the thing that we should be looking at. But I think the thing we should be looking for is conversation. Because I think if we look at community, our minds already move to this idea of tracking how many fans and how many likes and how much engagement and. But I think what we should be looking for is conversation. I think that's the great metric for a vibrant brand. And so when we create content that's inspiring and entertaining and that teaches people, the metric that we should have in the back of our mind, like, are we connecting with people? We should be thinking to ourselves, are we creating conversation? Now, that could be, are we creating, if it's a sales drive, are we creating conversation with our sales teams? Are we creating conversations with our CEO? Are we creating conversations with the people that we want to create conversations with? If we're a brand, are we creating conversations between our customers, with each other? Are we creating conversations in the media? Where do we want to create conversation? Where do we want people to connect with our brand? And I think conversation should be the driver behind what we're looking for now, instead of community numbers of people who follow us. Conversation is a more worthy cause of what we should be looking for. And then something I think is powerful as well is that we should be inspiring the share again, because this is how AI finds you. This is how the AI engines inside social will find you. It's the things that people share that get the biggest weight inside the content that you develop. And a share is statistically way more valuable than any other action that can be achieved inside social. And people don't share it much anymore. So it becomes more and more and more valuable. So to inspire people to share content again is the ultimate holy grail. And so turn your community into your influencers, and find ways to get your community to turn those conversations into shared opportunities. And so to kind of give you an idea of what I mean by that, I'll close with a case study, and then we'll move on to the rest of the through the rest of the program. But before I move on to that, let me leave you with this in terms of how we respond. Be human. Remind yourself that when the world gets more technological, our response as human beings should be to be more human. So technology should always be there to help us, to help the human be more human. That's the ultimate game at the end of the day. And so that's what our role should be. And so what I wanted to share with you is this case study, okay? And this is a very small, very simple campaign. What we did is we were asked to help a client in Kenya, who's a hotel that entered an award, and they wanted to drum up as much interest as possible to get people to submit their client themselves as a responded for the award. And what ended up happening was they ended up winning the award because of the work that we ended up doing. But they had a very small budget. The most they could afford to put into this was 12,000 Rand. And so over 3 months, we spent 12,000 Rand on a few ads that did a very simple thing. It just drummed up awareness that they were entering, that they'd been nominated in this award, and it let their audience know what they were doing. Now that doesn't seem like much, okay, because it's not. In itself, it's not a lot. The key here was that we had used data-driven marketing off the back of their customer database to really hyper-focus this campaign to really just their customers and lookalike audiences. And by doing that, we hyper-focused that campaign to just those that were also being exposed to a very structured email marketing campaign. And the email marketing campaign was built around the idea of winning a week away at the lodge on the basis that people would vote. Now, we had to put a nice big prize in the end because the voting process was like a 15-step process, and you had to jump through many hoops to make it happen, and then you had to email proof that you had done it. So it was a big ask. But on the back of that, we also asked people to share this with other people. We didn't create more incentives for them to do so. We just asked them to share this with other people across Facebook and WhatsApp. And the shares in total over those 12 weeks turned up to be 586 shares across all of those social media groups. And we generated an AVE value of nearly 450,000 Rand. And so the total campaign value from just the social viewing and social campaign value what far outweighed the value of the budget, just because we lent on the fact of data-driven marketing with the community that we really knew loved this brand, and asking them to really share the content out to their audiences, turning them into the influencers for the campaign. And luckily to say, they won the award, and they've been winning awards with their community ever since. So this is what we mean by like inspire the share going forward, build campaigns that do exactly that. And on that note, we're 20 minutes in. We're at the end of my session with you, my opening remarks. And it's at this point that I'm going to hand over to Happy Kamalo, who's going to talk to Proudly South Africa. So I'm going to stop sharing and I'll hand over to Happy. Happy, are you there? Okay, cool. We're gonna move on with the program. We're gonna jump through to the next person. So next in our agenda, Guy, if you wouldn't mind joining us, we're going to talk to the relationship between paid and organic media. Guy is from the Grow Collective. He's the CEO. He's been running that business for some time, and I'm going to now hand over to him, let him take over the reins and speak to us for the next 20 minutes around this really important relationship. Guy, you ready to take over?
Great, thanks very much, Mike. Really appreciate it. Let me just get my presentation up here quickly. All right, thanks very much, Mike. Really appreciate the intro and that talk that you did now. A lot of very, very interesting insights and some very, very relevant information, specifically around privacy and AI and how that's impacting on digital tracking and reporting. It's something that we've seen a lot of as well. So yeah, I'm very excited to be here. Thank you very much for having me. Like Mike said, my name is Guy Crenier. I'm the co-founder and managing partner of the Grow Collective. We're a full-service digital marketing agency. And today I'm going to be talking about a topic that I'm really passionate about, and that's the relationship between paid and organic social media. and their role in driving brand awareness and conversions for businesses and brands online. In this presentation, I'll be looking at the relationship between these two types of content and their role in achieving your brand's objectives. And we'll also be providing some insights into how to create and structure your social media strategies for both paid as well as organic. So I think it's firstly important to have a look at the digital landscape. And there's a saying in digital marketing, it's been around for many years, that if you want to hide a dead body, it's best to bury it on the second page of Google results pages. While it's a bit of a dark analogy, it really perfectly illustrates the challenge that brands face in the digital space at the moment. And it's not just on Google, the same analogy applies to social media. There's more noise and content and competitors than ever before. And the sheer number of platforms, creators, and brands vying for the attention of specific target markets is at an all-time high. The great paradox is that with the onset of digital marketing, it's made marketing more accessible to every business, but it's also made it exponentially harder to break through and build a loyal audience. There is some good news though. Despite all the tools and platforms and trends and different types of formats and changes to these platforms that happen on such a regular basis, fundamentals of business still hold true. We as brands and business owners really need to focus on these fundamentals, and those are to create a great product or service, to price it fairly for the market, and to make our consumers or customers happy. And if we can focus on that, the rest will follow. There's going to, no doubt, and there already has been a lot of really important and valuable information that's going to be shared. But I always encourage our clients and business owners to focus on these core fundamentals. So much can happen and change on socials and in digital. It's really hard sometimes to keep up, and we often focus on these really small micro changes on the platforms and kind of get lost in those and lose sight of what we're really here for as businesses and as brands, and that's to offer value to our clients and our customers. So throughout this presentation and what's to come, I really think it's important that we always kind of go back to that. So diving in, I think it's important first to explain the difference in the terminology here between organic and paid content. Very simply put, organic content is traditionally the content that's posted for free on a brand's social media pages and profiles. So that's kind of what appears on your feed without any media budget being put behind it. Paid media, on the other hand, is content that's promoted through advertising spend and budget. And the management of that content is typically, not always, but typically managed through a third or a separate platform, an ads manager platform that's linked to your page and your profile on social media, and can get quite technical. I think it's important to bust the myth about organic content being free and paid content typically being better than organic content. The truth is that organic content without paid support is often like shouting into a void. These social media platforms very often limit the reach of your organic content. On average, only 2 to 5% of your followers, the people that are actively following your page, will actually see any content that is promoted, that's promoted without, or that's posted without budget being put behind it. That's why, in our opinion, it's really important to look at these two types of content within a holistic social media strategy and make sure that we are putting budget and spend behind all of the content that we're putting out on these platforms. So when looking at your strategies on social media, it's important to kind of zoom out first, and I'm sure most people here would have seen some kind of version of this marketing or sales funnel. Basically, the idea is that consumers work through their purchasing processes and decisions within a funnel. So it starts with awareness, the top of the funnel, people become aware of the brand, and then slowly move towards a conversion, moving through a consideration phase where they consider a specific brand and then make a final conversion decision. Either purchase the product or the service that's on offer. And it's important to use the content that we're putting out on social profiles and pages to move the consumers through this funnel. The reality, however, is that in the digital world, this funnel is not nearly as linear as what we used to think it is, and consumers interact and confront the brand in many different ways online, and often enter and exit the funnel at various different stages. So it is important for brands to make sure that our social strategies are making sure that the brand shows up in all the different places that our consumers can kind of enter and exit this funnel. So when we're looking at our strategy, we obviously need to decide which platforms we're going to be active on from both an organic and paid perspective. And I think it's important to be really strategic in the platforms that we choose to go after or that we choose to be present on. One of the biggest mistakes that we see is brands looking to be on every platform at the same time and trying to make sure that they have a presence on every platform. And what tends to happen is that it's quite unsustainable and often very ineffective. Your platform choice should be driven by three things. Firstly, your goals, what you're looking to achieve, the audience you're looking to speak to, and your resources. The reality is that very often businesses and brands don't have the manpower or the budgets to effectively be present on all the different social platforms available to them. So it's probably advisable to pick 1 to 2 platforms depending on your resources and your audience and master those before expanding. And that's how we build traction and really get an understanding and deep knowledge of what works on the various different platforms. So from a top line perspective, if you're a visual brand, TikTok and Instagram are really valuable platforms. Kind of lump Facebook along with Instagram under the Meta banner. What's really valuable with Facebook is that it's very community based, and the users of Facebook typically congregate within communities, and if brands can tap into those communities and those interests, it's a really, really powerful way to get in front of engaged audiences. So in our opinion, Facebook is a standard, and every brand should be on the platform. But if you're looking to specifically develop strategies for visual brands, definitely TikTok and Instagram are where you need to be playing. B2B audiences or B2B businesses looking to attract other businesses and position themselves as thought leaders, definitely LinkedIn. And if we want to build trust through long form content, YouTube is where we want to invest a lot of our energy. Saw a stat the other day that consumption of YouTube content on TV screens has surpassed that of Netflix last year. So it just gives an indication as to where consumers are deciding to consume their everyday entertainment content, and it's shifting very much towards YouTube, and also the introduction fairly recently of YouTube Shorts is indicating that this platform is looking to compete more in that kind of short form content space, competing with your Instagram Reels and TikTok. So often a overlooked platform for brands. We find specifically here in South Africa, YouTube is one that we suggest brands look at and consider quite seriously. Once you've chosen your platform, it's obviously really important to understand how you create content for those specific platforms. And what I've given here is a bit of a top-line framework in order to do that, because each platform is different from the content that you create and share on it, and how you structure your messaging across those platforms. So I think most importantly to start off with is to understand your brand and the position that you want your brand to occupy in the minds of your consumers. So take time to lay out what that key messaging is that you want to convey about your brand, and the unique selling points for the brand as a whole, as well as the individual products and services. It's a really fundamental step in understanding how you're going to communicate with your audiences. Once you've done that, next is to look at your content pillars, which are the reoccurring themes that you want to create content around. And these can often, often align with the positioning of your brand. So examples of that, if we were to take, for example, a wellness brand, you could look at education as a pillar and look at the benefits of the different ingredients, for example, testimonials, behind the scenes or BTS content, and any promotional or promotions that the brand is running at any given time. Once you've got those pillars, you want to build up monthly content calendars. So this is the actual content that you're going to be creating. And we typically look to do that a month in advance to allow us to plan and to give us a visual understanding of the different content that's going to be going out on the platforms, to see if there's any holes that we've missed or holes that we need to plug, making sure that our different pillars are represented adequately within the content that we're producing in a month. It's a big mistake to try to create content or the majority of your content on the fly. When it comes to your ads or the paid media that you're running on different social platforms, it's really important to adopt what we call an always-on ad strategy, where you build out different campaigns based off the different stages of your marketing funnel, and trying to get consumers to move down that funnel with the different ads that they're seeing. And this is where a lot of that tracking and audience creation that Mike was talking about in the beginning becomes really important, and where understanding of privacy rules in the different markets that your brand operates in is really important, because this is something that's taken a real knock with fairly recent privacy laws. So having those different kind of touch points and structures in place really allow brands to create engaging content that creates these communities and ensures that we're creating touch points for the brand at any point that consumers enter or leave our marketing funnel. Community management is something that's also really often overlooked, especially with kind of small to medium-sized businesses, and it's really a secret sauce that brands need to focus on, specifically in the social space. And the proof of this is in the name. It's social media, and we want to make sure that we are being as social as we possibly can. And this is how we build communities around our brand. So make sure that you're engaging with your audience as regularly as possible, responding to comments and DMs, and trying to incorporate as much surprise and delight as possible. So whether it's a free gift for taking a specific action, or a little coupon code if somebody's done something cool, like tagged you or whatever, it really goes a long way to build that community and increase your customer lifetime value. It's also really important to look at the realities of your business and the size of your business to understand what's possible and how you create strategies based off the size of your business. So if you're a small business, typically your edge is in speed and authenticity, and we really want to focus as much as possible on the locations that you're active in and that you're present in as a business. So making sure that you're geo-targeting your ads as much as possible, as specifically as possible, engaging with the communities that you operate in, and making sure that you're focusing on those specific geographic areas. Medium-sized businesses, you want to kind of balance that brand and performance marketing, looking at retargeting audiences for your ads and incorporating A/B testing in your ads specifically, to make sure that you're sharpening that conversion funnel and the content that you're using to get consumers to take specific actions. Large businesses definitely want to scale up your efforts, try to get as much content out as you possibly can, and integrate CRM data specifically into your paid ads. If you're a large business and you don't have a CRM platform and strategy, you're really missing out on a lot of value there. And I would strongly suggest that you incorporate that and look at how you can incorporate, or you can take that data and those insights into your paid and social media efforts. Influencer marketing, really valuable, and definitely we consider a form of paid media on social media. utilizing influence is a really powerful way of tapping into markets and into audiences that are engaged and trust the influencers' opinions. And obviously, making sure that this is in as organic a way as possible is really important. When it comes to e-commerce brands, TikTok is a really, really important place to be playing in, both from an organic as well as paid perspective. There's a lot of really cutting edge ad formats and strategies specifically on TikTok for e-commerce brands that are really exciting from our point of view. Mike also touched on these kind of tech platforms encouraging users to stay within the platforms. And TikTok, we believe, is kind of streaks ahead in this regard. And one of the features that they've introduced in Europe and the States is TikTok Shop, which allows you to identify and run influencer campaigns within this tool, as well as incorporating a native checkout process, which means that you don't have to leave the platform to do your influencer campaigns and for consumers to purchase the products within the platform. And it's a really powerful tool and something that we're really excited about. And that's hopefully going to come to the South African market really soon. The last thing to kind of look at is to measure what matters. It's a saying that says what gets measured gets managed. So no strategy is complete without a measurement plan. So make sure that you're understanding what the different digital key performance indicators are and how they align with the different stages of your funnel. So awareness type KPIs, you're looking at impressions and reach. Consideration, you're looking at kind of click-through rates and engagement rates. And then your conversions, you're looking at your cost per acquisition, your return on ad spend, for example. So you really want to understand what those key KPIs and metrics are and how they align with the different content and ads and that you're putting out onto those platforms. We highly suggest you measure your performance on a monthly basis and really analyze the performance of your content and make sure that you adjust your approach accordingly. Lastly, upskilling and learning. All of these social platforms have learning materials and portals that you can tap into. Most of them are free of charge, and it's a really good idea to get into those and really work through those different courses. There's also a number of paid platforms that you can utilize to give a lot of insights and knowledge into how to run ads and how to create content. And also really encourage the embracing of AI. It helps a lot from the content and strategy perspective with regards to brainstorming and drafting and building out content calendars specifically. It's a really useful tool, and is where kind of digital marketing specifically is heading at the moment. Next steps and call to actions. If we're looking to kind of take it from here, definitely look at your digital ecosystem. Mike also touched on this earlier, looking at the website, making sure that it adheres to best practices from a privacy point of view and that it's built correctly. If your consumers can't take the actions that you want them to do on their site easily, you can have as much content and ads as possible. You're not going to get those conversions that you're looking for. Choose your platforms wisely, define your pillars and create your content, amplify it smartly, make sure that you're bringing your organic content into your paid strategy and putting budget behind that content, engage with your audiences on a daily basis, track your performance and upskill yourself and use AI. Cool. Thanks very much, guys. I really appreciate the time. I know there's a Q&A afterwards, so if there's any more technical kind of questions, I'm happy to jump into those as well. So thanks very much.
Thanks very much for that. Thanks a lot for that, Guy. A really good presentation on well, very informative right across the board. I really enjoyed hearing about that, and especially the TikTok and YouTube insights. I think people really do. Everyone raves about TikTok and but I think a lot of guys really struggle to find value straight out of the platform. And I also think that people underestimate the value of YouTube as a social media channel, right? Everybody tends to focus a lot on Meta and put their spend into those pockets. So I think that's important to understand. Renal from FGX. I know FGX well. They've got a lot of really good work behind them. So I'm excited to hear from their presentation from Scroll to Sale. Renal, when you're ready, you can share your screen and we'll take it from there.
Good morning, everyone. I'm going to do the classic Zoom or Teams question. Can everyone see my screen? Okay, I'm going to take that as a yes. So what we're going to be delving in today, guys, is the from scroll to sale. And what this basically is all about is converting social media attention into business growth. We're looking at tactics for beginners and experienced marketers alike, because sometimes we really don't remember or think about the most obvious things, and then practical, actionable takeaways that anyone can apply. So, quick question is, when last did you buy something off of social media? Was it a product, service, or a course? And which platforms influenced your purchase? Something that we say a lot is, us as marketers, always look at target audiences and we look at the intricacies of those target audience, but sometimes forget that we're still marketing to people. And even though it might be a business to business strategy, or it might be a specific service, at the end of the day, the CMO or marketing manager that you're marketing to on the other side of that is still a person that is using social media. So quick, let me just put this in presentation mode. So quick stats on the social media landscape within South Africa at the moment is that we have around, Facebook is still number one, with around half of the population of South Africa on Facebook. Sorry, guys, let me just get to that slide. Okay, so 27 million users on Facebook, which is nearly half of the population. Instagram, we're looking at 7 million users, especially under the age of 35. TikTok, as you've heard from Guy, has the highest engagement rate with just over 17 million. For B2B, we still use LinkedIn a lot, with its 12 million professionals. And then WhatsApp, even though not necessarily seen as a traditional social media platform, it's becoming more and more important for business to business messaging, with its 29 million users. Now, South Africans are spending 3 to 4 hours online. That is more than they eat, it is more than they exercise, and for some of us, it's more than they even sleep. And what this is all about, guys, is it's the new attention economy. Attention is our new currency. And if you really want to win in the social space, it's all about capturing its attention, directing it, and through this generate growth. And this is possible within the challenging economic times, which means that it's possible on the small budget, the large budget, and it's all about really creating content that resonates, driving it to the right target audience, and giving the right message at the right time to the right people, which we'll delve into a bit further now. So we always look at the 4-phase growth platform. First and foremost, finding your platform, creating awareness through telling a better story, building your community that drives intent, and then obviously converting with confidence, that will lead to a lead, a sale, or an engagement, depending on your objectives. So as Guy also alluded to, it's all about selecting your platform correctly. not diluting your focus and assuring that the right message is on the right platform. So for B2B, LinkedIn is still very strong. We use LinkedIn a lot for online reputation management as well for individuals to assure that they are focused in the thought leadership space and to really drive home the expertise of specific companies being in service, product, or other industries. For visual, Instagram and TikTok for obvious reasons. Local services, we still really look at Facebook because of the community aspect of it. And then youth-focused brands, TikTok is the champion there. But interesting stat, TikTok also has a massive following of 65 years and plus. So don't discount putting up content for them as well. And here we really look into researching the keywords on each platform. And here you can use tools such as SEMrush, etc. And this is where it's also very important to look at your whole ecosystem. So really looking at search engine optimization, where search influences social, social influences search, and to really assure that your whole ecosystem speaks to each other. Study your competitor engagement. We have an example of that hereafter. And really looking at how to utilize the different platforms for the different messaging. So for example, for a coffee brand, Instagram, we'll look at beautiful latte art, TikTok, behind the scenes content that really delves into engagement, content that they won't necessarily see, and for Facebook, local events and specials that speaks to the community aspect of this platform. So how we approach content is very much data-driven. And we look at competitors first and foremost. So looking at their engaging hashtags, their reactions that they have per social, per hashtag, per content topic. And then the prize metric engagement. Delving in deeper into each competitor, looking at their primary topics and the percentage of their content that speaks to the specific topic. What this does is it gives you the ability to identify low-hanging fruit, so topics that aren't being spoken about that you can immediately offer value to your community or your audience, and then also where you need to really compete and steal market share from competitors to ensure that your content is relevant and that it is what your community wants to consume. Then phase 2 is telling a better story. And this is all about the emotion and education. So it is about educating your community, entertaining them. And this we do so well in South Africa with humor, but also taking trends and adding a unique twist. Therefore, really creating relatable content. And this will automatically elevate all your content. And especially in South Africa, guys, we have such a rich heritage and we're so proud of our local content that using this to really create impact within your content is an easy win. So remembering that people buy stories and emotions is such an important way of telling a better story. And this is where we look at content comparison, making content not bland, but engaging through how you write and how you tell your story. And as we've alluded to as well, influencer marketing comes in handy a lot here to assure that it is engaging and that you tell a really good story. So bland content is driving a direct sale, but engaging content is telling a story, showcasing that the use case for your specific product or service, showcasing the specific problem it is solving, and showcasing how it can really enrich your life. So what we did here is we utilized an influencer for flasks for Campmaster, a local brand, and not using it as your traditional flask, but actually using it as mixes for different cocktails, non-alcoholic and alcoholic. I'm not going to play the video due to time, but we did various use cases with various influencers, with various recipes to really give the product variety of use cases for the community. And then lastly, really building your community on your different platforms. And this is about assuring that they don't just scroll past your content, but that they engage with your content, that it is something that they find value in to engage from. And this is where user-generated content really becomes king. As we all know, user-generated content is the new word of mouth. And this gives you an easy way to see how your community and your audience feels about your content. It gives you reviews. It gives you different ways to also understand what your community wants and what they are looking for in your brand, and what brand features you can focus on going forward to really build your community, build trust, and make more sales. And this is where we really look at growth. We did this for a company in EMEA. So it was Africa as well as Dubai focused. And we've looked at how to make the content relevant for the different markets. Everything from the content itself, to the visuals, to the target audience, to the language usage, and splitting that per audience to really assure relevance across markets. And this led to a fantastic community growth and a fantastic engagement rate. So we saw 193 Facebook page growth, 71 on LinkedIn, and an engagement rate of over 1,000%. And this is something that Guy also alluded to really assure that you are looking at data, utilizing that to inform your strategy going forward, and to consistently test and learn as you gather data. So how do you build this community? Authentic engagement first and foremost, and responding to comments within 24 hours is key here. And using the interactive features of the different platforms to really assure that you ask the right questions, and through that get responses to inform going forward. Show real people, share process videos, and celebrate team milestones and audience milestones as your audience grow. And then again, user-generated content to assure that you are showcasing features that your customers care about. Create branded hashtags to make your content really easy to search and easy to find. And then run customer spotlights, especially those that give you reviews. And then looking at measuring what matters as well. That is a quote that has been shared through these sessions. And these are your comments rate, your share rates, and your saved post, which really indicate on healthy, engaged community that you really want to chase. And then lastly, we look at how you convert with confidence. And this is where we truly need to give value to our customers and audiences to drive that last step to get them from brand ambassadors to people that convert and that are happy to part with their money. Here we look at lead magnets, and this is where you offer valuable content to your audience to make sure that they are invested in your brand. We look at thought leadership here through downloadable guides, quick video tutorials that really showcase how they can use the product, and things like checklists. That is an easy consumable piece of content that solves a problem. Call to actions here become very, very important. Not just have the plain and simple buy now, but looking at engaging call to actions that assure that you drive the lead, but you also have a conversation starter with your audience members to drive that final step to sale. And then sale conversions, we always look at the 3-to-1 rule, 3 value posts for 1 hard sales post. And here you use testimonials, you use reviews, and you showcase benefits and results, and not just features of your product that is usually associated with a hard sale. And all of this needs to be informed by the e-commerce value adds and e-commerce conversion aspects to assure that we speak to the relevant messaging that assures that you make that click to convert. And these are things like free shipping, discount offers, vouchering, bundle deals, etc. Some very interesting stats is that through remarketing, you can actually cover 10 to 30% of your sales. And then lastly, looking at the proudly South African advantage, as I spoke about a bit earlier. Making the local connection is an edge because South Africans really like supporting local businesses. So showcasing this local impacting, sourcing and community involvement gives you an automatic connection to your audience that will automatically drive engagement, lead them down the funnel, and in the end, make sure that your scroll converts to a sale. And that's us.
Noel, thanks so much for a really nice review from a social media perspective, but also diving into a few side aspects there on digital marketing as a whole. It's always good to hear from that perspective right across the board and to be able to hear how social media connects to all the different channels, especially when you look at that pipeline view. So thanks very much for that presentation. It's great to hear from you, as always. So there we go. And on to our next speaker for the day. Our next speaker is Flynn Africa, who's going to be, who is the general manager from Black Snow Agency. You're welcome to share your presentation now, Flynn. And he's going to be talking to us about the power of social proof. So Flynn, it's all over to you. Enjoy, have a great time, and we'll chat later.
Perfect. Hi, guys. I think like everyone has said, I'm Flynn Africa. I'm with Black Snow, and I wanted to talk to you guys a little about the power of social proof and what that means for us as South Africans and just as people who typically sit in 2025, right? So the first time I heard this term was in 2016, and the amount of stuff that has happened between 2016 and today in terms of understanding social media and what goes on digitally and the landmines that sit there for brands like yourselves in order to have meaningful conversation, but also chase the click. But don't chase the click because I told you not to. So what else must I do? Oh, wait, content creation is so expensive, but I need to keep on doing it as well. So all of these things are happening. And we wonder, you know, what's the way forward? How do we maintain being social and still maintain also being human? And what does that look like? So just a quick just a quick introduction as to who we are. So at Black Snow, we've been around for a minute. We have a few years of experience, and some of the success pillars we work with and keep in our minds when dealing with clients is really to fundamentally understand what brand performance experience and insights look like. So from a brand perspective, it makes, I think it's pretty obvious in that we really don't want to do more damage, or we don't want to take away anything from the brand. We want to elevate it. We want to establish presence. We want to build trust at scale and do all of those wonderful things. But we also want to focus on understanding what performance needs to look like. So measurable metrics. And the thing about social media is it's always given us these immense tools and these dashboards and these views on what performance can look like. And then a couple of years ago, we saw this term creeping in about vanity metrics, and we wanted to know, was that really a bad thing? Can we still monitor our follower growth and so on? And for us, having that conversation focuses more around then understanding what those metrics need to look like in the individual instance in your brand, and then building out a way of bringing that in and aligning it with your strategic objectives. But the one that I really want to speak to today is talking through experience. So understanding that, you know, we have this infrastructure and this ecosystem that we create around an audience we predefine. So, you know, what goes into the creation of that ecosystem, and how do we elevate that audience to a place where they realize they're not just speaking to a machine, they're not just speaking to a chatbot, but they're speaking to a living, breathing entity that's communicating with them in terms that they understand, about values they understand. And it speaks to them within the context in which they exist, from a macroeconomic perspective, microeconomic perspective, factoring in the political landscape, all of these things that inform experience, and then gives context to performance and to brand, and then wrapping that all into a nice narrative bow from an insights perspective, and being able to talk to clients about the exciting stuff that's happening within their sort of activities and what they're rolling out. Slowing it down a little into just outlining what social proof is. So from our perspective and in terms of our understanding, it's really just about viewing behavior that your peers are participating in and seeing it as validation that you should be participating in that too. So it's peer pressure by proxy, it's all of those wonderful things, but more than anything else, it's understanding the power of word of mouth, which we know is powerful. We've heard it countless times leading up to today, but it has a slightly different connotation to what's happening right now, right? So not only are we reinforcing good behavior, but we're also reinforcing technically bad behavior or ambivalent behavior. And it's really about understanding where we want to be and how is that going to drive your brand forward. Which conversations do you want to participate in? And in saying that, our consumers also trust each other more than they trust us, right? So as this behavior gets reinforced around our brand in conversations that are happening around us, we are being held to a certain level or to a certain standard of consideration. And that's something that I think we need to be participating in. This then often leads into conversations around tone deafness and inauthenticity and poor timing. And I feel like Gail King knew by the looks of that face heading into that spaceship that she was already in for a bit of a ride when she came back down. But beyond considering the political aspect of this type of conversation, or considering the myriad of landmines that brands encounter when trying to have strong, meaningful conversations with their audiences, it really is fundamentally about starting to understand what those core principles are around not being tone deaf, and around being able to build trust in the narrative that you endorse and that you participate in. And some of those fundamentals really do sit around just understanding who that audience is, right? And putting them first, understanding that you are articulating a unique selling proposition or a unique value proposition and positioning it in a place where the audience is able to access it and is able to use it and engage with it. So it's warranted that we then elevate that audience into a place of prominence. We embrace complexity. So I think there are very few brands out there today that are not encountering a level of complexity right now that is often crippling. There are financial considerations or political considerations around the products that you sell and how you position that from a content perspective to your audience who has so much going on with them already. I think we've mentioned previously about the oversaturation of platforms in needing to communicate different brands, key messages, and so on, as well as needing to then get someone's like vibe for their attention, right? Like, don't click there, click here. So knowing that and being able to balance that is quite key for us. Delivering brand values consistently. If there's anything you take away from today, I think it's just this line. So knowing that it's really about outlining those brand values and about understanding what they are. They don't have to be 9 different things listed on your front door or something that is profoundly deep, but rather just something that you know you can deliver on consistently and bringing that social proof concept in, be able to provide evidence of that. Moving into adapting messaging with cultural sensitivity, I think it goes without saying that as South Africans and as funny as we can be, we can also maybe be a little hard on one another when it comes to brands who maybe fall short of cultural sensitivity and knowing what each individual is essentially dealing with in South Africa. The Gini index is a good indicator there to say exactly how unequal we are as a society. So for brands that then prize themselves on being able to segment audiences at a hyper-local perspective, should then be able to take that into consideration. Growing authentic brand voice. So being able to understand what an authentic brand voice actually is, right? So again, we've outlined the need for brand values. We've outlined the need to be able to put that audience first. But when we do that, how do we want people to hear us speaking or to see us speaking? And when we ask them to do something and we have a call to action on a search ad or on a social ad, how do we want them to feel as they react to that? Because that is in turn going to give us a little more insight than just the click or the conversion. And then celebrate audience realities. So I read a post the other day that said that South Africa is not for beginners and that we can never take anything seriously. And I think that we have a few brands out there who are proudly South African, who have embraced that and have also helped us to further come out of our shells with regards to that by fully understanding what it is like to be a South African consumer, to be a South African customer or client, and the various pressures that are placed on us. Okay, so fundamentally, we know that it's about essentially understanding a positive word of mouth or understanding what positive word of mouth actually is and knowing how to tie that to social proof and understanding that that is our most powerful tool in terms of having good conversations, having meaningful conversations, and having conversations that have stickiness within them. So to be able to then bring that back into the marketing funnel and understanding what that is from a top funnel, middle of funnel, and bottom of funnel, we just want to make sure we're not coming across as tone deaf, right? We're marketing brands, building brand reputation, and essentially going out there with our consistent delivery of brand values. We're then reinforcing that message and building consideration through strong social proof, which amplifies trust and credibility. And wrapping that up in the decision process by turning browsers into buyers and into advocates. So I would like to then postulate that understanding social proof is essentially removing the media aspect out of social media, or removing the platform aspect out of social media marketing, to then be able to understand what that key message is, what we need it to do, who our audience is, and how we can get them to trust us and to believe in the authority that we have within the space that we've carved out for ourselves. A few examples that I thought were pretty compelling when putting this together, and that I thought really reinvented what it felt like to be exposed to brand messaging, is one of them is pineapple. So I'm pretty sure that the copywriting team and the creative direction team over here needs a pretty strong raise, but they're definitely having a bit of an existential crisis when it comes to what their key messaging is. But something that was more compelling to me about this brand than necessarily how catchy their message delivery was how this permeated the entire way in which the target market engages with Pineapple. They have reinvented the way of considering messaging and considering message delivery to their audience. And when compared to competitors or to their peers, I think it goes without saying that when it comes to message delivery, it's less now about that frequency or that push or that chasing of the click, but just about being catchy and about being sticky in the mind of that audience just a little while longer. Then we've got the OG Nando's. So I think Nando's taught us that it was okay to be a little bit like political and to stir the boat, stir the pot, tip the boat, I don't know. But essentially to develop messaging that capitalize on timing, audience, and the concept of key message delivery. And I think that coupled with the onset of COVID and what happened in terms of key message delivery needing to be aligned hyper-specific to its audiences, we saw more brands embracing this and wanting to experiment with tone of voice and wanting to experiment with platform and changing the way they see platforms. So I think we've also heard today about the diverse nature of Facebook being community-based versus Instagram being highly visual and aesthetic, TikTok being a little more biased to the youth market, but having this sneaky little side in with the elderly folk. And so when it comes to that, I really think that Nando's pushed the envelope quite a bit in terms of wanting to get that social proof and get that laugh, but the inadvertent thing that came out of that was it encouraged the rest of us from a marketing perspective to do the same. And then lastly, again, to sort of double down on the removing of the media and platform bit from the social media marketing message is what Checkers is doing, I think, in terms of understanding channel and distribution alongside audience and timing and being able to have that permeate through the 7 Ps of marketing and so on. Really, again, just amplifies the ways in which we talk to our audience visually and physically, utilizing all 5 senses to, again, reinforce that message that we are different. We speak differently. We're a little different from your local supermarket. We brand blames and stuff. But beyond that, I think it creates a stickiness, again, that no one can refute. In wrapping up, I wanted to focus a little on how we can look to strategy to assist us in getting there and just breaking down the concept of social proof and ensuring, number one, that it's there and that we're thinking about it, that we're not just thinking about platform, we're not just thinking about metrics, but we are thinking about the conversations we want to have. And then being able to embed that into what we do so that we can try to avoid that pitfall of falling into tone deafness and slowly move to a place where the sticky conversations we're having are resulting in sales. So firstly, I mean, we would obviously clarify the challenge and focus on a detailed understanding of what that brief would look like, right? So understand what we're expected to do, understand where we want to go, and align those that understanding of the challenge with the establishing of position and of the objectives we're looking to reach. So we are then looking to identify exactly what the KPIs are that we need to be following and growing towards. It's not completely stripping out the skeleton from the activity, but making sure that we do understand it. The key bit here, though, is to understand audience segmentation and key messaging. So just knowing who we're speaking to and understanding the alignment of that key message is key for us to be able to know how we can break that mold a little or to do things a little differently and to focus on how that communicates who we are and what we do. Then wrapping up with mapping the content and aligning that performance and that content or the key message to the audience in a way that they might not have seen before, but is really very well suited to them. And then to continuously optimize from there, right? To continue to experiment and to try new things, to not be afraid to do that. I think that that's a really key aspect to social proof, is that once you've established the key baseline or the foundation of those key values sitting there and being able to deliver on them appropriately and considering timing and considering the realities of your audience, being able to reinvent and refocus around that as a foundation and the delivery of message from there will allow for a significant amount of testing and growing as you go. So thank you very much. That is it from our side. If you do have any questions, you can just let me know, and you can also pop me a note on LinkedIn.
Thank you so much, Flynn. Absolutely brilliant presentation. Always good to hear what's happening. I'm going to ask the speakers to join us back into the session now. We'll chat through some of the questions that have been raised. You can put your cameras on and make sure you're unmuted, and we'll have a bit of a discussion. I've got a couple of questions to raise to you that are quite specific to our smaller business audiences, and then we also have a specific business question that has come up from one of the gentlemen in the session, which has also been great. So thanks for that. I've just got too many little Zoom windows open. Zoom has a lovely habit of bringing everything up on your screen. So I'll see where that is. Okay, cool. So guys, I wanted to kick this off by raising a question to Guy first, if that's good to start with, Guy. Guy, I think the biggest challenge for a lot of SMEs is budgets. And when you look at paid and organic. And the advice is always we should do everything in paid, and then the question is always around budget. And there's this thing about if we just spend something, it'll be okay. Is there kind of this threshold where actually you're spending too little? You actually need to be spending a certain amount of money in a particular platform. If you are low on budget, are there specific platforms that you think we should be focusing on? What are your thoughts around, like, specifically a business that's limited on budget, currently has minimal traction inside social media channels, and all they really want to do is be able to go, I've got a small budget, I want to make the most of it in this space?
Yeah, very, very important question, and something we face all the time. I think it's obviously first and foremost very important to understand what your objectives are as a business from your ads that you're going to be running, and then align those with the actual campaigns that you're creating, and it's aligning your budget with those. So if you and also looking at the stage of the business, where your business is in its life cycle. Are you a brand new brand, kind of just entering a market? Are you fairly established? Do you have some kind of audience? What kind of data do you have that you can kind of plug into the back end of these ad manager platforms that can help you a lot with your targeting? So these are all considerations to take into account. I think if you're a startup and you're kind of just entering into a market, you want to be focusing on those awareness objectives. So getting as much reach out of your campaigns as you possibly can, and not expecting any kind of hard conversions, especially in the beginning, and letting that brand awareness do the work for you. So getting in front of as many eyeballs as you possibly can, and this is where your tracking becomes really important, especially on social. So ensuring that you're creating those audiences based off the impressions and engagements that you are getting from these ads that aren't typically sending people to a website, for example, where you can, where they're clicking on a specific button that you're tracking, and when you're creating an audience of people that are converting, etc., etc. So basically, and not to get too technical on this, but within the social platforms, a lot hinges around your events, as well as your audiences that you create. And that's kind of the fundamental basis on your remarketing strategies later on down the line. So you want to make sure, and let's just take Meta as an example, making sure that your events, so basically the stuff that the platforms are tracking, are set up correctly. So whether it's an impression or a page view or whatever, making sure that those events are tracking correctly and are receiving data. There's a lot of technical stuff around that with conversion APIs, etc., which I'm not going to get into now. But then taking those events and the data that's being collected there and creating audiences off that. So whether it's a video view audience, for example, those are great. So if you're posting a video for impressions or for engagements, and people are viewing it for a certain period of time, you're creating an audience. That view of 10 seconds or whatever signifies some kind of engagement and interest from that audience member. So we want to capture that information. And then later down the line, and we're speaking specifically here with brands that have got limited budgets, you can take that audience and then move away from specifically awareness-focused ads to some more kind of conversion or engagement-based ads that are using those audiences that you've created and targeting them. So yeah, budget is definitely, specifically for startups and kind of small businesses, always a concern. So I think you just need to be really strategic in how you structure your campaigns, and obviously limiting the amount of platforms that you're on. I would say probably Meta is your best bet off the bat, and then also being super location targeted. Don't try, if you operate in Cape Town City Bowl, no point going after Durban. Be very focused in your locations.
I think one of the things that I come across quite a lot is that guys will sort of jump in with a budget, and that's their like all-in budget. So they're like spending everything they've got. Like this is like you said I need to spend, and you gave me a quote. Hey folks, sorry about that. I'm back online. Is everything good?
Sorry, we're back online.
Yeah, we're good.
I think there's a construction site right next to me that's been killing my power supply throughout. I've had great power all day except for the session, so it's been great. Welcome to South Africa. Sorry. So what I was saying is that what I talk to a lot with startups is that they'll often come in with this idea, well, I've got to put in my all-in budget, as in like I'm going to give this everything I've got for 3 months, and if it doesn't work, then like all hell's going to break loose. And I normally say to guys, like, actually don't do that. Rather do the budget that you can afford. Like, give me a budget that you can actually run with for 2 years, because the longevity of being able to run a campaign for 2 years and gather data on your customer base that allows you to then start to build lists and understand the actions and fine tune the audiences over time is way more valuable than what we can do with a campaign in 2 months. And so there's more value in the longevity of one campaign than like doing a whole pile of stuff for 2 months, hoping like it's all going to land. Because advertising in the social platform especially just isn't just as simple as launch campaign. It takes two weeks alone just for the campaigns to warm up, before your data starts learning, and for you to start learning what they're doing. So time frame, I think, is important. So if you can afford 30 grand now, rather spend 10 a month if that's what you can do for the next year, and make so that's kind of the way I've sort of tried to see it as well, because like you're talking about all these events and fine-tuning these audiences, that data can take time, especially if they're working with niche audiences. So yeah,
absolutely. And I think
you think?
Sorry, it's breaking up a little bit, but I think also the your creative and the actual content that you're putting out impacts the performance of the ads so much, and you need time to test those and to run different variations, etc., to see what works and kind of refine that strategy. So, I mean, we say, like, at a bare minimum, you need campaigns to run for 3 months, like at an absolute minimum. We look at kind of 12-month retainers with our clients, because in reality we need the time to be able to sit with the data and tweak and make optimizations over a prolonged period of time. So absolutely.
Renal, I'm going to put you on the spot. Best content types right now that drive the highest results to actually get a conversion on a site out of social.
Great question. Absolutely fantastic question. Unfortunately, there isn't one answer that fits all. It depends on your objective. It depends on your audience, and it depends on your messaging. So what we've seen is, as Guy alluded to, Meta is the best bang for your buck over general. It has the lowest cost per click, and it definitely also has the I almost want to say the easiest way to learn and test and adjust and adapt. However, the TikTok platform to drive to website e-commerce sales has seen an amazing uptick in the last couple of years. So definitely something to consider, especially when it's a product that you're selling. And then, of course, good old YouTube unboxings, product reviews, etc. for more I almost want to say higher value items is still one of the main places where people do research to actually decide what they are going to buy on. So as we all know, YouTube is actually I think it's number 2 or 3 now in terms of search engines. And that's where people want to gather information to make their decisions on what to purchase. So unfortunately, not a simple answer, but definitely something to take in consideration when you're putting together your strategy.
Putting one back to Flynn here. So if I'm starting a business, social proof is obviously really tough to generate. So I don't have a large customer base yet. I don't have testimonials. I don't have a lot of PR out about me, etc. What are some sort of easy ways, low cost ways for me to start building social proof?
Yeah, so I think, again, reverting back to what I said earlier, and maybe just removing that platform bit away from it and taking some of that pressure off there, and really just looking at the way you look at integrated market or integrated sort of solutions and developing your strategy, knowing what low-hanging fruit is out there. I think from all of our sort of startup clients that we've had, it's really just about understanding what that niche is and what that niche looks like individually for you, and being able to then package compelling stories from the ways in which you've delivered within those smaller segments, and then being able to build up that story from there. So whether that's a local sort of forum that you're focusing on, that you're looking to get out there, I think the key element is that you are going to have to do some uncomfortable things, right? Like if you are a small business, you're going to have to start putting yourself out there and start advertising. But I think the key element there is to understand what that small forum looks like and what those stepping stones look like in order to build you to a place where you know there's this multi-system that's sitting around you and walking with you as you go. And eventually you'll get to the point where those social channels develop the following you need it to have. You'll develop the messaging that's strong enough to be carried through a digital PR sort of campaign that's going to come from that. So I think it's really about embracing the size of your following as it is, or the size of the platform that you have, and being able to build messaging from there.
Okay, so if I rephrase what you're saying is, if no one else is talking about you, there's a value in talking about yourself and phrasing and framing your story on the platforms that you own, so that people have a place to hear about you. The digital communities that have a place to digest what you're about and what you're doing.
Exactly. I think that for the most part, it's really about being able to give your audience the language to be able to speak about you. So to package that messaging and make it simple and make it easy for them to understand, and don't allow the scale of the platform you're looking to build to eclipse the message you're trying to deliver to that audience. And that's in doing that and in packaging that to them that I think they will start to be able to understand who you are, what you do, what that sense of advocacy looks like.
Okay. Okay, so jumping into some of the questions here, we've got Paul from a business called Freshmo. He's got some interesting questions, but he's really wanting to understand platforms that are kind of a good fit for an eco-conscious, health-focused community. Okay. What I'm going to do, I'm throw it to the, and I'm going to give you one sentence of advice for Freshmo right now. I'm going to get, and what we need to know is what's the platform, and what's the community? How do we find this eco-conscious, health-focused community for him? And he is budget conscious. It's a new startup. It's getting off the ground. I did a bit of exploring. He's on a GoDaddy website. He's got a mouthwash health conscious product. Couple of things to think about. Is TikTok viable? Should he think about personal branding? Is it a case of personal testimonials? What should he be thinking about? One sentence. Should I? Who wants to go first?
I'll break the ice.
There we go.
Okay, so definitely Instagram backed by Google search to assure that you showcase product usage, but you are easily findable with a relatable hashtag that ties back to search.
Oh, I love that. I love that, because it's under that whole premise that if you build social awareness, that customers tend to buy, their purchase mechanism is through search. So that's very powerful. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, I'll go next. I would definitely say nano and potentially micro influencers. So understanding what that landscape could potentially look like. I think one thing we know for sure is that engagement rates do differ when it comes to the size of those influencers. And I think that there's enough bargaining power for brands such as yours, where you'd be able to set up a strong relationship with someone whose following is not necessarily that big, but engagement is really strong. And you can build again that story as you grow platform and as you evolve from that. And hopefully even retain that relationship as you go ahead.
Yeah, and then I think just to understand, like if you're looking to where to go, you can actually just Google micro and nano influencer agencies or consultants or people that you'll find people that can help you with that. Guy, what do you think?
Mark, I'm going to be very irritated. It broke up a little bit, so I didn't get the full question. I got the eco packaging, and he's looking for the platform.
Yeah. So he's an eco-conscious, health-focused. That's his consumer base. He's a startup. He's got a website on GoDaddy. It's mouthwash sachets and biodegradable toothbrushes as his product. You've got one sentence to give him the best advice. What platform, on a budget, where would you focus?
Can I ask a follow-up question? Does he sell
Yes.
direct to consumer, or is it a B2B focused brand?
It looks to me to be B2C.
B2C. Okay, cool. Yeah, I think as far as your audience goes, you'll find an audience on pretty much any of the major social platforms for your product. You know, I think it's the content that you create is the most important thing, and then creating that community over time doesn't happen overnight. It takes a long time if you're going to do it specifically organically. So yeah, I think if he starts anywhere, either Meta or TikTok, I would say would probably be his best bets, just easiest entry barriers. Going way over one sentence, so I'm sorry about that. But yeah, looking at his entire ecosystem, that website is really important. Like your website, the way it's built and the way it's structured, a lot of people don't pay enough attention to that. A lot of brands don't, especially startups.
Nice. Okay, then I've got another one here. Renal, I'm going to throw this to you because I know that FGX is in this space. Is it worth having an expensive website if most of the sales are done and concluded on social media platforms?
Define. Sorry, guys, my cat just wants to say hello. So no. If you have most of your sales that are concluding on social, and that is your main traffic source, build a website that works, obviously, and that is user journey focused, aka conversion focused. Because what you want to do is you want to have that user journey as seamless as possible from social to website to assure that no matter where they land, you get a conversion.
Yeah, I'd agree.
And if I could just add to that, Mark, I think, you know, there's a lot of platforms out there that make web design development not nearly as costly as what it used to be a few years ago. And it's worth exploring those and making it, you know, choosing one that's, you know, that you can kind of edit and upkeep yourself. And like Renal said, really zoning in and focusing on those user journeys on your site and making sure that whatever the end result is that you're looking for a client to take or a customer to take, that the path to that from anywhere on your website is super easy, and it's super convenient for them to be able to get the information that they need to take that conversion as possible. Yeah, so many people run ads on socials and on Google. They create the most amazing content, but then the user experience on the website is really bad, or the site loads very slowly, or the architecture and the navigation is confusing, and they wonder why they never get conversions, they never get sales or leads, and that's really a huge factor in that.
Yeah. There's a question here to me around whether or not the website traction is diminishing. So the statistic around the fact that AI is changing the way in which search works is changing the way in which traffic moves through websites, etc. So that is true, but it isn't diminishing the mechanic of a website and the need for a website and the way we handle content. In fact, AI search, a lot of the statistic that's not coming out is there's a lot of data that uses this fact that AI search refers to certain links within its content, and those links are highly clickable as well. They're just not as trackable as the top search results are currently through all the various different tech that we have. So there's a lot of catch up that now has to take place because of these new mechanics and the way we track. I know for a fact that I get a lot of ChatGPT traffic to my site around content that is very specific because of the way in which we develop content. So content on your site becomes way, way more important. But these are more conversations that are around content and SEO and site development than they are around social media. So I kind of veered away from that for the presentation. So my honest answer to you is that content and web are incredibly important, but the way in which we manage them and use them in our marketing strategies is shifting and changing because of the impact of AI. And what I feel is that the relationship between that content and the way in which you handle social media content need to really kind of marry up quite tightly as well. So that I hope answers that question. And then I'm going to put this back to our PPC guy, but they've been spending 2,000 to 3,000 rand a month on PPC. They're getting 0 returns. Is the budget too low, or what would they do?
Yeah, very difficult question to answer without actually getting insights into the setup of the campaigns, what that business is.
Let me rephrase the campaign. Let me rephrase the question. Have you seen companies with budgets of 2,000 to 3,000 rand get returns?
Yes, absolutely, yeah. I think you've also got to answers.
Yeah, that answers the question. So I think it's possible that you can. The circumstances may change, though. There would be certain businesses that could do really well on that budget, but certain businesses may struggle based on the type of product. And without forcing anyone into a corner, you're not going to sell Boeing 747s on a 3,000 rand budget. So depending on what you're buying and what you're selling, at the end of the day, it may be very possible you would need to have a conversation with someone going forward. Just the one that popped in recently, so I'm just taking clicks because of that. One of the presenters. Okay. So there's a question here, and I'll leave it to anyone who wants to answer it. There was a slide in one of the presentations that spoke to the fact that small companies should focus on geolocating their audiences, their marketing. How do you do that if there's no physical store?
Yeah, I think that was one of the slides in my presentation. I think there's a few ways. So if you're looking at like just your purely organic content, if you're not putting budget behind that content at all, you could look at potentially tapping into kind of community forums and stuff on platforms like Facebook, for example, and that's a great way to tap into very hyper geolocated audiences. Relevant hashtags, people, community members, potentially partnering with them, or other businesses that operate in specific geolocations and doing collaborations with them. Those are some really cool strategies and tactics, and they're really useful. If you are running ads and running paid media, it's very simple. You can geolocate your ads to specific areas, and you can get quite granular on that as well. As far as not having a physical store is concerned, I assume that means that you either got an e-commerce store, doing some kind of leads-based business. Look at what your most profitable region is and start there. Like capitalize on that market and extract as much value out of that location as you possibly can, and grow there. And then look at the next neighboring area, or the next most profitable area that you can focus on. So I think those are some top-line strategies that you could look to incorporate.
Well, thanks so much, Guy, Renal, Flynn. Thank you so much for your time. It's been great. I really enjoyed the Q&A at the end. It's always great to chat to people, and I always find it fascinating to have conversations with like-minded people. It really looks like the entrepreneurs and small businesses in the audience really enjoyed it too. We got a lot of questions that opened up when we started this part of the session. To the guys that we haven't been able to get to the questions, sorry, we haven't been able to get to everything. We do need to close it down. We're already 5 minutes over what we promised. So what I would like to suggest is we will be sending out the presentations to those that have asked for it. The speakers that are happy to share their presentations, those presentations will be sent out. So that will happen. You will get those if that happens. What I would suggest is that if you send your questions through, you can get in touch with the presenters themselves and start to pick up those conversations with them directly. I'm sure they'll be more than happy to pick them up. Either one of us are happy to help out wherever we can. So those questions are more than valid. There's marketing SMEs is an interesting game. It's a tough space out there, but we're all in a very unique space in South Africa as we grow this economy and we grow our own businesses. And so it's an exciting time. So everyone, thank you so much for taking the time out to learn how to grow your businesses in the middle of all of these public holidays that we're in. If you have kids and they're all on holiday, my condolences. Mine are in the same space. So I hope that you're doing well and that you have a fantastic public holiday tomorrow, and that this presentation, all of these presentations in this webinar has added a lot of value to your business. Have a fantastic rest of your Wednesday. Have a great day. Ciao.